Hello, and welcome back to the Gotti Video Podcast. This is a space where we host conversations with different architects, designers, and industry thought leaders to help educate you in your work. My name is Joe Gotti, and I'm the COO and Director of Design here at Gotti Furniture. On today's episode, we have not one, but two guests, Malcolm Holzman, member of Interior Design Hall of Fame and partner at Steinberg Hart, as well as Amanda Rienth, principal at Steinberg Hart with an extensive experience in both academic and public libraries. How are things going out in New York?
Really good.
Good.
The weather has finally cooled down a little bit, so that's very nice and less humidity.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, I usually like to start off. I'd love to get some background on both of you guys. Malcolm, if you want to go first.
Is this a 4-hour podcast?
We'll probably need the condensed version for you.
I've been practicing architecture for 5 decades, essentially making public buildings. And it's been a very exciting and fortunate career. I've had the opportunity to make new buildings, to restore old ones, and to bring old ones up to date by totally changing them. And the joy of all this is I've had the opportunity to collaborate with a number of really terrific people. Amanda is definitely one of them.
Well, that's a great lead into Amanda. Amanda, why don't you give me a little bit of background on you?
Sure. I started working with Malcolm actually when I was still in college back in 2009 as an intern. And then I decided to come back once I graduated full time. So I've been here for just a number of years working together and really do focus a lot on academic and public libraries, as you said, and just really enjoy that part of what I do and being able to kind of make those connections that are so important in those spaces, but really just anything that impacts the public where the community is able to come in or there's a real impact to the work that we do. So been very exciting to develop this and to partner with really fantastic people while doing it.
Yeah. And you guys have done obviously a number of really great projects. It seems like you guys are both doing your interior and architecture all under one roof. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, and that seems to be not always as common, but it's always actually really nice when you're working with a firm. Do you guys find that beneficial to kind of be able to control the whole project on that level?
We think about it differently. Mm-hmm. We make public use projects. People come to our buildings to use them. So what the inside is about is as important as the outside. So thinking about all of the accommodations that will make people feel at home to use something and to make the most of it is as important as how it fits in its context.
Interesting. Would you guys say that there's a project that sticks out in your mind for you? I mean, it's probably hard to pick just one.
That combines both exteriors and interiors in a really sort of impactful way.
Yeah, I think anything that maybe a project that kind of grabs you. Yeah, and I think from the standpoint of maybe interior and exterior kind of combined together.
There are too many names, and a number of them are library projects. I mean, Jefferson Hall at West Point was one of those because it's such a unique institution. It's a national landmark site, building on the plain, a historic place, but then making a place that's comfortable for cadets. I remember when we started the project, they thought if they could accommodate 1/4 of the cadets with seating, it would be adequate. The building has been such a hit and success and so used that having 1/4 of the cadets in the building seated at one time is not enough. It's hard to believe. At other universities, you could never expect half the university population in the library. So how to accommodate, requirements like that are what makes a project exciting. How do you do that?
Yeah. How do you do that?
We did it too well because everybody wants to be in this building. So that's, and it's having a spillover effect to other structures.
Oh, wow.
And sort of bringing those forward to better accommodate the cadets, but in this case the students who want to do their work, to do research, and to just be in a place that feels comfortable and that they can be at home in.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So Malcolm, what got you started and focused in on kind of academic public libraries, public space work?
Well, it was really the public aspect. I mean, being a public person, you run around, you go to lots of places, and some places make you feel comfortable and others don't. The aspiration to be more comfortable in buildings has gotten me to be as interested in interiors as it has exteriors, because all you want to do is interact with other people. I mean, our office is like a hothouse. I mean, we work with each other. I mean, we work this close with each other, as close as we're sitting today, because we're exchanging ideas and making suggestions to each other and telling each other we're doing things wrong and right and all those kinds of things. But that also happens in public. People do it more politely. Nonetheless, the exchange of information is still incredibly important. And how that happens, you want to promote that happening in the best possible ways.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Hey, Amanda, so how did, so you started your internship with Holzman Moss and then continued on. What made you want to come back and focus on public space architecture interiors?
I think that just the way that we think about each project and the way that we craft space for every client, there's no sort of set aesthetic or look that we're conforming to, right? Every single project is about what the experience needs to be for that user, for that audience. And so just the amount of sort of investigation that goes into discussing things with the community or the students, the research that we do as a firm on each locale to make sure that places feel rooted in their space. That always stood with me, even after the internship, was that there's this real connection to not just making beautiful spaces, but making spaces that have that specific connection to where they are and to who they're for, right? Because I think back to that sort of experience, people's experience with a space starts from sort of before they even get there, right? They get in their car, they're driving, there's an experience that happens then, and they pull up and what they see, the landscape, the architecture, and then kind of walking through the front door, what they touch, how that transition is to the interior, and then how exciting the interiors can be, because a lot of times that is their experience of going to a place, right? And so I feel that we really pay attention to each of those elements and how they come together to really impact people and create something that's exciting that they'll remember is one of the things that just drew me to do this work and to create these sorts of places.
Many people, and I think in general, the press thinks about architecture as self-expression. That's where the notion of the star architect came from. I need those. But in fact, architecture is really about communication. It helps promote lots of things. It's not about expressing yourself. We can do that very easily. That's not the objective. But it allows people to come together to use a place because of the public nature of the buildings we make and to communicate with each other in the best possible way. So being self-expressive is not what we're about. We're trying to find notions and ideas that will promote things in a bolder and better way. How to do that? And we can argue about that. Yeah. If we make this whole place pink or lime green, or is that going to help anything? How can we make it an experience that people will appreciate and like? It's their first time or their 300th time coming back to the same place.
Interesting. So you guys, Amanda, you mentioned something about research too. Do you think that the research kind of plays a big part of that process?
It definitely does, but I mean, there's only so much you can find out on the internet. We're all cautioned about that on your research papers. So it definitely helps. And what's interesting to me is we do that research sort of on our own before we would attend, our first public meeting or our first client meeting. And so fascinating is when we bring up something that they didn't even really realize or think about, right? Like they wouldn't have come to us and said, oh, we're the onion capital of the world. We should do something to celebrate that, right? And so I think that's what's exciting about the research is being able to dig deeper into history and to find those things that then they do say, yes, that does kind of explain us, or that is something that would be memorable or a story that we would like to tell through the design. And so finding those opportunities and then, testing them with the client and with the users, is this something that, again, will resonate with you and make you feel like this is your space and this design is for you?
Research is a much used word in architecture these days. And it's tough to be against research. We're definitely not that. How could you ever be against research? But on the other hand, data is expanding at such a rate, buried under a mountain of it. Mm-hmm. The question is, what data is of particular interest at the time you're doing something with a client? What is it in all that data that matters? How do you separate that? How do you define what a building and its interior spaces should be about for that particular community? What is it that's important to them? So sometimes the research isn't in the data, but it's in the community, and you need to extract it from the people who aren't used to discussing that. People feel more comfortable coming to our building if they can drive their car, but they won't park more than 200 feet from the front door. Well, I never know that. I live in an urban place. Mm-hmm. So there are things that need to be found out, and research can take on and happen in lots of different ways. So you go about research for materials in one way, fabrics, construction items. The basic research about a community really comes through that exchange of information with your clients at the outset. And there is a desire to make these places suitable for the communities that they're in. And no two communities are the same, but they have commonalities. So it's sorting out what's important in those commonalities in that community, what counts more than something else. And it's an exciting thing to do, and it's what keeps us interested in all of these projects, because it's different every time. And the client always responds differently. You may know about what may be coming, and then you're totally surprised. And that's what's so much fun about it.
That's interesting. So how does maybe you can describe to me and for everybody how the process works a little bit. It sounds like maybe you can describe to me like how the initial research starts and then where it kind of goes from there, maybe working with the client.
Out of interest, we'll research a place before we go to that place, right? Find out about it, understand it. And then it's really about those community meetings, those client, those user group meetings, and understanding what they're interested in and what their needs are, and what really the project is about, right? What is kind of guiding the need that's going to, the driver that's going to happen at the outset of what we do. And then it's about really coming to them with lots of ideas, right? And testing things out and seeing, not just one idea, but 3 ideas or 4 ideas. And then, the solution might be a mix of each of those pieces. And so it's a very kind of iterative process that we find just fascinating, right? And I know we have a reputation for bringing a lot of study models, a lot of things that you can play with and move around. And it's about, people really have a hard time understanding architects' language sometimes, the way we speak, the words that we use, and also our drawings, right? They're very flat, they're black and white, very two-dimensional. And so we want everyone to understand what they're getting, right? And we think that there's a tangible aspect to that little kind of study models, being able to play with things, to understand things. There's real value in that. In addition to, the really beautiful kind of 3D renderings that show what they're about, we do so much exploring that we want to test ideas through some of those processes. And so that's very critical.
And because of the changes going on in libraries, it's a very unusual time when I was a boy, first using the library, shh, be quiet and don't remove the book from the research section. So I was wildly surprised on a visit a decade ago to Athens to see an inscription about something very similar 2,000 years ago. Don't remove these documents unless you have authorization, and the place is only open until this time of day. So it reminded me of when I was a boy. There were certain fixed regulations about what you were to do. That has all changed.
Yeah.
Libraries are no longer about that. Libraries are about something totally different, and we're defining it at this very moment. So it's not any longer the topic of how many books can you put on in a stack and how high can you make a stack. And therefore, okay, our library is designed. It's really about how libraries see themselves and how they want their constituents to interact when they come to the library. And it's defining that, which is something librarians are doing at this moment. And architects are responding to, and interior designers, to make that change. And although there's a lot of lip service about, oh, yes, we've got this figured out, and it's all about this, that, and the other thing, no, we're still sorting at this very moment. Because we're moving towards that thing that 10 years ago everyone was railing against, libraries without books. I mean, the internet is so incredibly strong, and libraries have taken on so many other public roles that the balance between these things has shifted. There is no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And it's bringing these things together to make a satisfactory place. And we know it's going to continue to change. But what we're designing for today, people are going to want to change further. We know that. So you have to design for all of those accommodations. So it's talking with folks just to find out what they want to do now and thinking ahead so that they can gracefully move forward into the next era.
Yeah. And I think, you hit on a really poignant topic there and I think a lot of people are struggling with, libraries are going and, have gone and are going through a shift. And, I think a lot of people would agree that they're not done with that shift and we're continuing to learn. So when you guys are thinking about, a new building or an extensive renovation or even a minor renovation, how do you take that into consideration, knowing that we will continue to evolve and they're probably going to evolve a lot faster than they have in the past?
Yeah. Yeah. We think about this topic a lot. We are always hearing the words flexibility, adaptability. That's like the number one kind of buzzword when it comes to libraries. And it's not even a trend anymore. I mean, it's a reality for these libraries, right? I mean, I think that the pandemic showed us this in an even larger way, this need to be resilient, right? To be able to kind of react to what's happening on the fly very quickly. And so when we are discussing kind of with new libraries or extensive renovations, it's about how do we achieve that, right? Adaptability, that flexibility for them. And there's a few things that it really boils down to that they need, right? They need sort of power everywhere. That's a driver, right? You can do a lot if you have a power outlet every 10 feet.
Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of an interesting thing that we've been exploring a number of ways to kind of achieve that in a realistic way. And then also libraries traditionally did have, lots of books and lots of rooms that were designed to do a particular thing, right? One thing, it was a conference room, it was a study room, it was a director's office, it was the technical processing space. And so we're kind of discussing less and less with them needing to design individual spaces that only serve one need, but how to look at building maybe fewer walls, how to build spaces that have all of the things that those rooms did for them built into maybe a large open space, entirely unenclosed, because they only need that space at night, not during the day. So during the day, it can be one thing, and in the evening, it can be another. But there's a lot of infrastructure right? All of the stuff that you don't look at. It's not the pretty stuff. It's not what you see when you walk into a space. There's a lot of planning for that stuff that goes into it to make that possible. And those are the things that I think we're really talking through with clients when they're interested in exploring that. In addition to then the pieces that go in like furniture, right? Those things being much more mobile, the shelves on wheels, books, tables, furniture on wheels, pretty much everything being flexible, because you never know when you're going to need to distance people 6 feet apart or bring them together to have a conversation. So you need things that are user-friendly to accommodate all of those needs on top of it.
Well, life was easy when there were identifiable collections. Adults, children, physics, theater, religion. You could go to those rooms and you'd be happy. That doesn't exist anymore. And the divisions will be different. They may be divisions by technology and acoustics. Rather do my work in a quiet place. Oh, I don't mind the noise, but I like to see the people around me working. I feel much more comfortable. So I can be in a noisy place and be with my friends and do my work. So there will be a different set of divisions. The problem is too many libraries are looking like airports. And by nature, airports aren't comfortable to be in. And those libraries that do aren't comfortable either. And if you ask every librarian, at the outset of the project, what should it be like? Oh, it should be welcoming. So what's welcoming in Cleveland may not be welcoming in Waco. And therefore defining with them what makes a welcoming environment. So the library that we worked on that you assisted us with for furniture in Orlando at the University of Central Florida, the floors are being rethought based upon noise levels. So the higher up you go in the building, the quieter it is. And everybody knows when they come that, maybe they can't make quite as much noise at the top as they can in the lower levels. And due to the kinds of activities that go on there, and it's just organized slightly differently. Now, there are different departments sprinkled throughout. One of the organizing devices has to do with acoustics. And it's important because when you go there, again, you want to feel comfortable. So how and what makes you feel comfortable? What actually welcomes you? I think every community defines that differently.
Yeah, I think you hit on something there. Like there's two things. It seems like it's a natural human element to want to categorize things. We just like categories. And I think you're right with the change in the libraries that there's been static categories for a long period of time. And now that's changing. And I think you're right. I think that's what maybe adds to the complexity and maybe even the stress sometimes is that not only the categories are changing, they're not changing for the same way in the same, area by area. What, acoustics is important to one, separation of something else is important to other. Technology is important to this group. And I think that makes it, while maybe it's challenging, I think it makes it, interesting and fascinating all at the same time. Because it's like you said before, you walk in and it's completely different every single time.
And it's going to affect what I'll call cultural manners. Because everybody used to go to the library and had to be quiet. I remember all this stuff. I had to pay a nickel if I kept the book too long. There were rules. But now we're going to have to learn how to treat each other differently and better again, being segregated by age or anything. And therefore, how do you treat a young person when they're sitting next to you and there's an old person sitting next to you on the other side? What are the manners for this given situation? And the internet and the era we've just been in with this COVID hasn't been a help because we're so separated, we don't have to worry about any of that. We're just a headshot.
Yeah.
You can hear everything. It has nothing to do with real life. But some of the most exciting things happen when you're sitting next to somebody and you can work with them.
Yeah.
So in fact, the culture that we're in now is not promoting, I think, what will lead to success in the future in these kinds of buildings. Because it's that interaction and the sense of interchange and manners that you need to promote that allow that to happen that's important.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. And earlier you talked about, when you're describing your office and your guys' process, you described it as like a hot box.
Hot house.
How would you say?
Hot house.
Hot house, excuse me. Hot house.
I use that because that's where plants grow in a hot house. They used to call those glass houses hot houses, and they allow things to grow and germinate and become things. So that's the way I think of our office. It's more like that than any other thing I can think of. It's people working together, and it's sort of like a library in a way. There are areas in it that are very similar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think and it's interesting because I share a very similar point of view where it's challenging, especially when you're working on something complex, creative, visceral. Like it's challenging, being apart. How have you guys managed through some of the challenges in the last 12 to 18 months, being, working on something complex, being in an environment where you've kind of grown up and having the hot house and helping to germinate ideas? Like, how have you managed that?
I think we managed really well, actually, right? I mean, we hadn't worked probably a day from home ever. And then, we went to the next after that weekend, working from home, consistently. But what was really interesting about it is I think there's some real positives and I think there's some real, negatives, right? There were real downsides. So the positive was that you got to make connections with people all over the US, in a much greater way than you might have, right? They got to participate in some of those conversations that if they weren't sitting here in our office, maybe they wouldn't have participated in, right? And so you actually got a lot more input and a lot more connections with kind of a larger variety of people coming in. And so, through video chat, through all of these things, we discovered a lot of new kind of fun, cool internet tools to allow us to draw on screens, to mark things up, to spin around 3D models together. We had a lot of technology help. But I think there's still real value to coming here in person and gathering around something pinned up on a wall behind you or something sitting on a table in front of you. So there's still this really great energy in this dialogue that happens when we're here in person. And I definitely think some hybrid mix of that could be really successful as well, where you're getting both items and you're figuring out when one works and when the other is potentially better.
So we had a great head start. Because of this hothouse kind of environment we're in, everybody sort of sits at one big desk in our office. So everybody knows each other very well. We don't go around Molly's barn to ask somebody a question. You don't have to wait an hour until you say, well, what did that person really want? Mm-hmm. We've learned how to be very direct with each other. Oh, I need help with this. Oh, I can't fix this. I can't sort this out. What is this about? What does this mean? So everyone who's here has been working with each other for quite a while. And therefore, being separated initially wasn't a problem because we all knew each other really well and we could still work in that very direct way. And what Amanda is describing is our office merged about 2 years ago. And there are 4 big offices in California, Steinberg Hart, and here we are on the East Coast. Well, the internet allowed the merger to happen much quicker and better because we had to meet all the time with everybody. And it didn't matter because everybody was dislocated. Everybody was in their home or in some other working environment. So in a way, it sort of evened the playing field. And it was really great because then we all came together from an equal point of view. So it allowed the integration of the offices to happen much more quickly. And it was surprising. And it's been very successful in part because of that. So this little dilemma that we've been dealing with has been very helpful from that point of view. On the other hand, though, it's much different to be able to pick up a pen, and I can do this for Amanda, and she'll take it and go, oh no, it should have been this. So that part can't quite happen that way. Yeah. It can happen, but not quite that way. So you can make a drawing, somebody else can make a drawing, might alter the same drawing, but I'm sure all of that will change in time as well. And I think that those of us who exist because of how we see things, how we illustrate the things we're imagining in our mind's eye, it's much better to be able to talk to people immediately about those things. So there is a delay through the internet. And although I can see you very well now and I see all of your facial reactions, how you're really reacting and going, no, that may not be right. We need to fix this. When you're sitting next to somebody, you get that message right away. You don't have that right. Let's fix this. And Amanda's very good at that. And I go, great. Well, show me what to do. And she'll show me what to do. And that's what's so nice. And it's just not Amanda, it's everybody in the office acts that way. So we miss that part of the interaction. It's that personal sort of connection that speeds things along and just makes things sort of more collaborative. Not that you can't collaborate electronically, you can, but there's a limit to that.
There is. And I think a lot of people probably that don't work in a collaborative environment probably lose or don't have enough understanding that there is a level of body language that takes place that just having a video camera does not always fully represent that. But it sounds like you guys are really kind of it seems like you've been able to somewhat balance out and really pull in the positives where you need to and try to mitigate the negatives where possible.
Well, design, like life isn't linear. Go from here to here to here, and now I'm done. Martin Puryear, the sculptor, said, it's linear like a spiral. And I think that the spiral part works better in person.
Yeah.
We are not in science where you do this, you do that, and you have a conclusion. We do this, that, and then we do this, that, and that again, and maybe 6 more times, and then maybe we decide we had the wrong this. And we do that. So I don't know how it works, but there's something about doing that together with other people that speeds it along. Makes it much more exciting. Fantastic things have happened over the internet. A lot of our projects, because they're public projects, require fundraising. So I never thought that I could participate in fundraising events via the internet, but I have, and it's been successful. So I wouldn't have thought this possible before, but it has opened up my thinking about any number of things. So I think that we are learning about all the things that we can do, but we're also learning that some things could be done better in person, and that's also important.
Interesting. So I want to shift gears for a second, and I can't let you guys get away without us discussing the UCF projects. So we've done a couple of phases with you guys, but one of the more recent phases had some unique tables and chairs on that project. I'd love for you guys just to be able to give us some background on the project itself, like what really drew the inspiration, especially for that particular room with the customized chairs and tables, and just kind of the project in general.
This project really started out back in 2003, so it predates me starting here, but back in 2003, with a bunch of planning studies about the University of Central Florida, actually, over, I think, the last 10 or 12 years, has been one of the highest by campus population universities, has the largest kind of campus population in the entire United States, and right now it's currently number 1. So they had these 2 existing buildings that had been kind of glommed together that held all of these books, all of these very specific collections, and the poor students were sitting on the floor, right? There were no room for the students because there were so many books in the library, and they knew they needed to make room for the students, right? That's what was really important, was them supporting their learning and their education. And so one of the big things that we proposed was taking all of those books and building this 3rd giant building next to the 2 existing ones that we were going to house over 1 million volumes of their collection in. So we were taking them all off the existing floor and housing them in this robotic, automated retrieval system. It was this 3-story volume, right? That the top of it had these fantastic views, right? And so Malcolm said to them, well, we should take advantage of the space on top of this room, right? It's 270-degree views of campus. I mean, it's really stunning. And I believe you proposed, what if we put a really special reading room up there? What if we build this new sort of modern reading room, like you might get at the Rose Reading Room at the New York Public Library, right? Those gorgeous spaces, just doing studying or contemplating or reflecting. And so it was actually a space that I think we proposed to them through the process.
It wasn't in the program. So let me add a little bit to what Amanda has indicated. The first building on campus is now the library. So 60 years ago, when this campus started, it only had one building. And everything happened in this one building. The administration, the teaching, labs, and material storage. And it grew concentrically, but it had a front facade, this building, and it faced a big reflecting pool. So it had a very important front door. That's its iconic facade. It's on every postcard that every student sends home to say, I'm going to school here. But the campus has grown, as Amanda has indicated, in leaps and bounds. I mean, it's just been an incredible success story. And they have made out of nothing an entire university of an enormous proportion with lots of programs, undergraduate, graduate, a business park that works with the university. I mean, it's just a fantastic place. So the library still faces in one direction, but they built behind it the student center, which is the heart of where students go during the course of the day. But you had to walk around the building to get in it. So there were lots of reasons to change the building. And librarians don't like to have two ways in. They really want one door. So there were lots of complications. And the solution took years to find, lots of discussions, and it was, as they say, a patient search. It was finally decided that storing all of the materials right next to the existing building where you could retrieve them in just a few minutes would provide instant access. Frequently, retrieval systems have been built miles away. It takes a day or two. But they thought if they could get materials instantaneously, that would be great. And Amanda's right. This new piece that we made is right across from the student center. And we said, well, we're making a 5,000 square foot container for all these materials, 50 feet tall. We could put something on the top of it. It seemed a little unusual in the age of technology to call it a reading room. We didn't want to call it a science lab or a technology. So it was called a reading room, but what it really is a special place on campus. And the room itself is a little unusual in that it's 5,000 square feet, which is very big. The shape and plan is trapezoidal. So it's not a rectangle. And the idea of making this special place at the top, something memorable, was important to the librarians. They thought it was important because there wasn't anything particularly memorable inside the current library.
Okay, interesting.
It had so many pieces of material stuffed into it, you could hardly find a place to sit. So they wanted to reduce all that to make a place for the students to feel comfortable. And then the notion that they could have a space totally devoted to that was exceptional. Now, it's also, now that it's been completed, people realize an exceptional place on campus. And everybody wants to go there, whether they're using the library or not. And I think some of the administration like to go and do things there as well, because it's now become a public space. So for us, there was the dilemma of making a room like this. And having worked with your company and your father for many years, we knew that you were not daunted by challenges. So we said, well, we want to make a room within this bigger room. 5,000 square feet, you can have a lot of activities. So Amanda did a lot of space planning for this room. And we have a clear story window above the space that's also trapezoidal. It brings light into the center because it's a big room. And we didn't want windows just to be around the edges. We wanted it to be a light-filled space. So in the space planning for it, we developed 6 or 8 different kinds of seating areas around the edges so you could take advantage of the views out. But in the center, under the clear story window, we wanted to make a special area where you could feel comfortable in this big room, but you could also sit down and concentrate on your work if you wanted to. So in a room that's 20 feet tall and has 5,000 square feet in it, we thought we could exploit the furniture to help do this. And the image that came to mind were the arts and crafts architects and designers from Wright to McIntosh to Hoffman made their version of ladderback chairs. And ladderback chairs were important because they became so big that they made something behind you that thought you were closed. I'm now sitting in a chair that doesn't come up to the bottom of my shoulder blades. It's made below me now. You can't even see it. But we thought by making something bigger that came up behind your head, it would give you the sense of being enclosed within this bigger space. So you were very gracious. Not only did you go, oh, we can make ladderback chairs that are 5 feet tall, we can also make trapezoidal tables. So we put these chairs at those tables so they look like they belong there. And it took some work to do that, but working collaboratively with you, we've been able to make those. We were able to take samples down to the librarians so they could sit in them and tell us whether they thought these would be comfortable enough for people to use in the way we were envisioning it.
Yeah, because comfort, I think, the ladderback chairs don't inherently look super comfortable. Right? You look at them and you don't think, okay, those are going to be very comfortable. But to that point, you all worked with us very closely to really look at that angle and to create a mock-up chair that we did take down there, right? And together we're slipping pieces and items underneath it, the angle of the seat, the angle of the back, because we did want them to be very comfortable to sit in for these students while they're studying. And so I think there was something to that they're not only, this sheltering, large, gigantic, fantastical piece of furniture, but they're very comfortable as well.
I guess the old library still has its way with me. There was the sense of the chairs needed to be scaled to the room. We paired the chairs. The backs on them go this way.
Yes.
So that they go together as a pair. So you actually read 2 as 1. And it has to do with the size of the room and reducing the scale of it. But it also, from this kind of stuff, it also tells you when you put a chair back out of order, it immediately tells you, oh no, that chair doesn't belong there, it belongs here. So it's a self-organizing system as well. So it was, for us, a very enjoyable experience. This was not a space that the university came to us and said, we need as part of our program. Now, we need a way to seat 3,000 students. We now have 60,000. We wish we could seat many more. So we were always looking for more seats. But they also wanted to do it comfortably. And, we tried to populate the entire building. And they didn't know that they could have a memorable space in addition to all the functional spaces they needed. So the more we talked with them about it, the more they thought that was a desirable thing to have. Something really special to come to the library about. And it sort of took off once people understood what a special space it would be. And it's been really great to see the reaction to it now that it's there. Yeah. Because people are treating it like it's a special space. And it's not like all the other spaces. And people are wanting to use it for special events. So it's just at the beginning of its life. It will be great to see it evolve over time as well. But it reminds me of all of those great communal library spaces that have been for centuries. People can still use them. I mean, you know, Hadrian's library at its heart had an open space where they took the parchments out, walked around and read them, and then put them back where they belong. But it was a communal space where activities happened. That's sort of what the reading room is about. It's not about going off and studying for your specific project, doing research about your project, or doing graduate studies. But it's about being in a space where communally you're part of the university doing your work. So it's turned out to be a very special room.
Yeah, and I mean, it looks great. And I think, you know, you guys have talked about this in a number of times, you know, kind of throughout the podcast here. And I think it really separates like your work from I think other spaces where you're taking the time, I think, to consider not only the comfort from two perspectives, the physical comfort and like the mental comfort. Because I think a lot of people gloss over the mental side of the comfort, you know, like you said, the high back chairs, you know, it's not just a way to bring the chair and tie it into the room and have it scaled to the room. It has that functionality to, you know, give that person that more individualized comfort while working there. And I think a lot of people, you know, don't always look at it from that perspective. And I think that's probably what makes your guys' projects, you know, very successful, looking at it from both those angles.
Well, let me add that we've enjoyed working with your firm.
Thank you.
But the reason I say that is not every firm would work with us as you have. You know, it's sort of once and done. Here's my catalog. This is what I have. And yeah, if we change this, well, that'll be 3 times the cost. So we can come to you, and it's been a generational coming to you topic of, we're thinking of something special. We want to make a chair that is for children. It's only this big, and we want the seat to be just this far off the floor. We do that. And you would go, oh yeah, let's try that. Let's see what happens. So we do one of those, and it wasn't so hot. So maybe we ought to do another one, maybe do it different. And you would have a lot of suggestions about it. And when I say you, people on your side of the table would suggest things to us that would make that more workable. And it's proven to be the case, even at the University of Central Florida, decades later, we're still doing the same thing. So that's how unique things result for clients. They have a reading room that they know is theirs. It's not like anybody else's reading room.
That's for sure.
And it's very special for them. And it was rewarding. And although it's taken 18 years to get to this point, which is the ribbon cutting ceremony, and we still have a few more years to go to do the renovation of the existing building. But, you know, they have accomplished something, and you can actually see the results. In this time period, they've made a lot of other buildings on campus, but I'm not sure there is that same communal sense of what they've achieved at the library as with some of the other projects.
And I think circling back to one of the things you said about the mental health of students, right? And I think that's probably, I hear a lot of that in the way you design furniture as well. But, you know, starting college is a very anxiety-ridden time for students. You know, it's coming out more and more. And so that definitely is kind of part of the thought processes, but also just how are the students reacting to the designs, to the furniture, to all of those items. And so at the University of Central Florida, we actually allowed the students to test set all of the furniture. We brought, you know, 20 chairs, 20 kind of study booths or kind of pods, and we asked them to vote on them and to give us lots of commentary on a number of topics. But we know that everyone is also different, right? What supports one person may not support another person. And so giving them that choice and allowing them to be a part of those selections was a very critical step for us in making the project a success at the outset. And then I think hearing the students' reaction as well. I love to get unsolicited feedback and what are people really saying, not just to your face, but behind your backs as well. And so I know that students these days like to post on Reddit. And so I'm always searching the Reddit pages for what might they be saying. And right when the reading room opened, a student had snuck up there and taken a photo of it and posted it. And hearing the comments, I mean, they all just absolutely loved it. And they said, just hilarious things, because it is a fantastical space, right? That, it's like Alice in Wonderland, or like, instead of Hadrian's Library, to them, it was like the Harry Potter communal kind of dining space. Yeah. But, in that sense, they loved it, right? Because it was this place that they wanted to go. They wanted to seek out. They wanted to be in, because, you're right. Nobody else has a place like this. And it meant something to them, right? There's a sense of ownership for them now of this space. And that was really rewarding to see, them chatting about that just on their own on a forum, right? With one picture that they had posted of it. So it's been incredibly rewarding to experience that side of it as well.
Yeah, how great. What an interesting background. Again, when we were working on it, and I wasn't totally involved, my father and Matt, one of our industrial designers, he really, the two of them really worked on the project, but I wasn't aware of all the background. What a fascinating story. And I appreciate you sharing all that with me. We're kind of coming to the end here. So I wanted to, wrap up and get, a little bit of words of wisdom or encouragement from each one of you. Yeah, Amanda, if you want to share something with us, that would be great.
It's important to really understand who the users of your project are, and what resonates with them in terms of making things these days, right? And thinking through what is that experience? What will they remember? What will they take away? Not just next week or next month, but in 20, 30, or 50 years, right? Because I think there's this notion that everything is disposable these days, right? And I feel very important that our work is not disposable, right? That it's the thing that has lasting and staying power. Because, years later, we revisit the same spaces and there's still that same sense of interest and welcoming and excitement that there was the day it opened. And so for me, I think that comes from, again, it being special to that location or to that place, right? And not just following whatever the next kind of national trend in aesthetics or design or functionality would be, but what really makes sense for you. And so that's what I think I would leave people with today.
I think we're coming to a much more optimistic time. We've lived through a very unusual period, and it may not be over yet. And it's had lots and lots of facets and aspects to it. And I think it has, in some ways, cauterized us. And it has certainly made me think that something new is coming. I remember maybe 50 years ago, when just over the horizon, you could begin to sense that something new was coming. It was called historic preservation. The country was so young, it was surprising we had something to preserve. So I think that one of the things that's going to change our focus is I think we're going to want to preserve the future. And I think it will reorient us different way, because we do have a future, and what we want that to be. So just as we were concerned previously about our past and not losing track of it, I think we're going to want to keep track of our future. And the fact that it can be optimistic, especially after coming through the period that we've come through. I don't want to be Pollyanna about it. It's been a difficult time for many people, and many people in urban situations and rural ones. But I think we're coming through it. And it is going to be, from my point of view, an exciting future. And what we want to do is to be able to preserve those exciting futures that are still in front of us. And I think that's about all I can make of where we are. But I think it's as big a sea change as when Americans discovered they had something historic to preserve.
Yeah.
I think we're going to want to preserve having a future. I don't think we're all going to become Jeff Bezos and spend our scads going someplace else. We're going to be right here, and our future can be better. And I think we can focus on that and make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I really appreciate both of your guys' time today. This was very, very fascinating, enlightening conversations.